I always thought peace was something you earned after a lifetime of storms. When I bought that little farm, surrounded by golden fields and whispering trees, I believed I had finally found mine. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old, a retired teacher, and a widow for the past 8 years. My husband, Daniel, used to say, when we grow old, we'll watch the sunrise from our porch, not a hospital window. He never made it to that porch, but I did. For years, I lived in the city, surrounded by noise, by rush, by people who didn't look you in the eye. The farm was my way out, my retirement dream. A small cottage, a few hens, a garden that smelled of lavender and earth. I even painted the gate white, Daniel's favorite color. The first few weeks were heaven. Mornings were filled with birdsong, evenings with the soft hum of crickets. I'd sit with my tea, watch the sun melt into the hills, and feel him there with me somehow. But peace never stays untested. It began with a phone call. My son, Ethan. "Mom," he said, his tone unusually sweet. "I've been thinking, maybe we could come visit the farm for a while. You know, let the kids enjoy nature. Sarah could help you out around the house too." Sarah, my daughter-in-law. I smiled at the thought then, not realizing that call was the start of something that would test not only my peace, but my heart. At first, it was all laughter. My grandkids running through the fields, Sarah helping me bake pies, Ethan fixing the fence. For a brief moment, I thought life had blessed me twice, once with my family, and again with peace. But slowly something shifted. Boxes began to arrive, big ones labeled Sarah's kitchen, Ethan's office, kids' room. When I asked, Sarah just laughed. "Oh, just a few things for our stay, Mom." Except they weren't staying. They were moving in. And not just them, a cousin, a sister-in-law, and even Sarah's parents soon started visiting every weekend, until my quiet farm was filled with chatter, cars, and chaos. I remember one night, lying in bed, hearing Sarah's voice from the next room. "She doesn't need all this space anyway. It's better if we take care of things here." My heart sank. The peace I bought with my savings and dreams was slipping through my fingers, and my own family was the reason. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because sometimes silence is stronger than words, and I had a plan forming quietly behind that silence. At first, I tried to convince myself it was temporary. Maybe they'd leave once the summer was over. Maybe this was just family being family, loud, loving, and messy. But I was wrong. The laughter that once filled my house began to sound different. Forced. Calculated. There was a kind of ownership in the air, like I was a guest in my own home. Sarah started rearranging furniture. My kitchen, my sanctuary, where every spice jar held a memory, turned into something out of a lifestyle magazine. She painted the walls beige. She threw out Daniel's old chair, the one he built with his own hands. When I protested gently, she smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Mom, it's just a chair. We're making space for the kids' new reading corner." I didn't argue, but that night, I sat in my room and cried quietly, not because of the chair, but because of how easily we had replaced me. Days passed. Ethan was always busy. Meetings, calls, plans. But I could see him avoiding my eyes during dinner. It was Sarah who started managing everything, groceries, repairs, even my mail. When I asked about a letter from the bank that never reached me, she laughed and said, "Don't worry, Mom. We've got it all under control now." Those words, under control, they echoed inside me. Under control. Slowly, I began to feel trapped. The farm that once breathed peace now felt heavy, suffocating. Even my garden looked different. Flowers trampled by children, lavender replaced by laundry lines. One evening, as I was watering the plants, I overheard Sarah on the phone, whispering near the porch. "Yeah, it's perfect. The property's all in her name for now, but Ethan's talking to a lawyer. Once she's ready to transfer ownership, we'll move the rest of the family in permanently." My hands froze. The hose slipped from my grip, water spilling into the dirt. Transfer ownership? I felt my heart pound so loudly it drowned out the crickets. My own son, my Ethan. planning to take my home? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows moving like ghosts of trust one once had. For years, I gave them everything: school fees, rent, support when they were broke. And now they wanted this too? The next morning, Sarah knocked on my door, holding coffee. She smiled, but there was something new in her eyes, something sharp. "Mom," she said softly, "Ethan and I have been thinking. You're not getting any younger, and managing the farm must be hard. Maybe it's time to put it under Ethan's name. You'll still live here, of course, but it'll make things easier for all of us." Easier for them. I stared at her. My lips trembled, but I said nothing, because in that silence, a storm was starting to rise. They thought I was old, fragile, harmless. But they forgot. I spent 40 years teaching children how to think, and I had just begun to think back. So I smiled faintly and said, "You're right, dear. Maybe it's time I start planning things properly." And that smile, that one quiet smile, was the beginning of their biggest surprise. I thought silence would protect me, that if I stayed quiet, the storm would pass. But silence, it only gave them space to grow louder. A week later, I came home from the market and saw a for sale sign leaning against my front porch. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone left it there by accident. But then I saw Ethan standing beside it, clipboard in hand, talking to a man in a suit. My knees went weak. My son, my own blood, showing my home to strangers. When he noticed me, he looked startled, then forced a smile. "Mom, you're back early. We were just getting a property valuation. It's nothing final yet." Nothing final. The way he said it, calm, confident, practiced, like a man who's been planning his betrayal for months. I could feel something inside me snap, quietly, like a thread breaking under too much weight. That night, I sat alone on the porch, the old wooden swing creaking beside me. The wind carried laughter from inside the house, Sarah's voice, light and careless, as she talked about future plans. They were planning my future without me in it. For a moment, I wanted to scream. To tell them everything they were taking wasn't just wooden walls. It was memories. Daniel's touch, my sweat, our love, the sound of every sunrise we built together. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Not yet. Let them think they've already won." Because sometimes, revenge doesn't start with rage. It starts with silence that watches and remembers. A few days later, Sarah hosted a small family gathering, her words. But as guests arrived, I realized it wasn't family at all. It was potential investors. She stood there, smiling proudly, introducing the farm as our upcoming retreat center. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. I stepped forward, smiling politely, and said, "Oh, is that so? I'd love to hear more about this retreat." Her smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. I saw it, that tiny flicker of fear, and in that moment I knew, this wasn't just about land anymore. It was about dignity, about the part of me they thought had died with Daniel, but they were about to learn. I wasn't done living yet. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, calm, distant, like a stranger wearing my son's smile. I kept hearing Sarah's voice echo in my head, her laughter ringing through the walls that once held Daniel's whispers. The betrayal wasn't just deep, it was deliberate. In the morning, I watched them from the kitchen window. They stood in the field, talking to a man in a black SUV. Someone new, someone important. Sarah was showing him blueprints. My blueprints. The ones Daniel and I drew years ago, dreaming of a quiet orchard for our retirement. Now those dreams had price tags on them. I felt my chest tighten. But instead of crying, I smiled. Because something inside me shifted that day. The grief turned into something sharper, quieter, calculated. I started listening more than I spoke, watching more than I reacted. Every careless word they said became a clue. Every whisper a weapon waiting to be sharpened. One evening, I overheard Sarah say, "She's too old to handle all this paperwork. Once it's signed, she won't even understand what happened." And Ethan, he didn't stop her. He just nodded. That was the moment my heart finally stopped breaking and started burning. So I played my part perfectly. The quiet, naive mother. The woman too lost in her memories to notice what was being stolen. But in silence, I made copies of every document. Property deeds, bank transfers, messages. And while they planned my removal, I planned their exposure. I met an old friend, Daniel's lawyer, someone they didn't know still worked with me. He looked at me with pity when I told him everything. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. I smiled softly. "I'm not doing it out of anger. I'm doing it out of love. Love for the man who built this land with his hands." That night, as rain started to fall, I looked out over the fields, our fields, and whispered, "Daniel, I'm sorry I let them touch what we built. But it ends now." The lightning flashed across the sky, and for a brief second, I saw my reflection in the window. Not a victim, not a broken mother, but a woman reborn through betrayal, steady, calm, and ready to fight quietly. They thought they were building their future on my silence. But little did they know, my silence was the foundation of their downfall. The storm outside hadn't stopped for 3 days, as if the sky itself refused to let go of what was coming. I sat in silence, my hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, eyes fixed on the empty fields. Everything looked calm, but nothing was. Inside that calm, a plan was taking root. Slow, deliberate, invisible. I knew Ethan and Sarah thought they had won. They believed I was too broken to fight back, too tired to even care. That's what made them careless, predictable. And that was their first mistake. One morning, Sarah handed me a stack of papers. "Just sign here, Mom," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. "It's just a routine update." But her eyes flickered, too quick, too nervous. I took the papers, smiled faintly, and said, "Of course, dear. I trust you." She didn't notice my phone recording every word. That night, I went through the documents. They weren't routine. They were a silent heist, transferring my land, my home, everything Daniel and I built, to their names. My hands trembled, not out of fear, but because I realized how close I had come to signing away my life. Instead, I did something they'd never expect. I signed, but not those papers. I signed new ones. Quietly filed through my lawyer, locking every asset in a trust they couldn't touch. The farm, the savings, even the house, now legally under the name of a foundation for widows. But I didn't stop there. Because revenge isn't about destruction, it's about revelation. So I invited them for dinner. The same table Daniel built with his own hands. Ethan laughed, relieved. "See, I told you she'd come around," he said to Sarah. They didn't notice the lawyer's car parked down the road. As they ate, I watched them closely, every smug smile, every careless word. I stayed quiet, letting their comfort grow like a vine tightening around their own throats. Then halfway through the meal, I said softly, "Ethan, I made some changes to the property. I hope you don't mind." Sarah paused mid-bite. "Changes?" I looked up, meeting their eyes. "You'll see soon." Their smiles faded. Confusion flickered, curiosity sparked. The first cracks began to show. They thought I was still that soft, grieving woman clinging to old memories. But they were wrong. The real storm hadn't hit yet. And when it did, it would wash away everything they thought they owned. The next morning, the farm was quiet, too quiet. You could almost hear the tension breathing through the walls. The old windmill creaked in rhythm with my heartbeat as I stepped outside, knowing today would change everything. Ethan's car screeched into the driveway, dust swirling behind it like a storm tail. Sarah followed, her heels snapping against the gravel. "What's this nonsense?" she barked, waving a letter in the air. "Your name's gone from the deed. The bank says the property's frozen." I didn't answer right away. Silence, I'd learned, is more powerful than shouting. Instead, I simply said, "You might want to sit down." Their anger was loud, messy, but under it, I could see something new flicker in Ethan's eyes. Fear. That quiet realization that the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as he believed. He slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do this to me. I'm your son." I met his gaze steady. "No, Ethan. You stopped being my son the day you treated me like a wallet." The air shifted, heavy, electric. Sarah tried to step in, but the lawyer entered through the back door right then, placing a folder on the table. These are the final documents, he said. Everything has been transferred to the Daniel Foundation for Widows. Sarah froze. You mean she gave it away? The lawyer nodded. Every acre. The silence that followed was almost sacred. Ethan's face went pale, then red, then hollow. You ruined everything, he whispered. I smiled softly, tears burning my eyes. No, Ethan. I just freed everything that was never yours to begin with. Curiosity hung in the air. Would he break down? Would he scream? Would he apologize? But all he did was walk out, his pride shattered louder than any words. When the door closed, Sarah stayed behind. Her voice, trembling now, said, I didn't know. I just followed him. I nodded gently. Then this is your chance to stop following and start living. She left quietly, and I stood by the window, watching the last traces of dust fade down the road. The fields glowed under the morning sun. The same land Daniel once dreamed would give us peace, and now finally it did. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end, because peace after betrayal doesn't come as silence, it comes as understanding. And mine was just beginning. It was late evening when the phone finally rang. I'd been expecting it, not out of hope, but out of certainty. Guilt has a way of circling back, like a bird that can't find a place to rest. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, my fingers hesitated. Then I answered. His voice was rough, unsteady, layered with exhaustion. You happy now? He spat. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You destroyed everything I worked for. I let a small silence breathe between us. No, Ethan, I said softly. I destroyed what you pretended to build on my back. He went quiet, just the faint sound of wind over the receiver. You could hear his pride breaking, piece by piece. Then came the crack in his voice. You think I wanted this? I just wanted to give Sarah the life she deserved. There it was, the justification, the self-pity, the guilt hidden behind good intentions. I almost laughed, not out of mockery, but out of pain. You wanted to give her a life with my money, Ethan. But you took from me the one thing I can never buy back, trust. For a second, he didn't speak. I thought he hung up. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, I didn't know it would go this far. Mini-hook moment. I could feel a shift, the moment where remorse begins to outweigh ego. I took a deep breath. You still don't understand, do you? This was never about the farm or the money. It was about you forgetting who you were before greed took over. His silence screamed louder than words. And then, that one line that cut through the years of distance. Mom, do you still love me? It felt like a knife twisted with hope. My heart clenched, but my voice stayed calm. I'll always love you, Ethan. But love doesn't mean I'll let you hurt me anymore. A pause. A shaky exhale. Then quietly he said, I'm sorry. And before I could answer, the call ended. I sat there, phone still in my hand, the sound of the disconnected tone echoing like a ghost. Tears slid down my face, not from sadness, but from release. Because sometimes the loudest apology is silence. And for the first time in years, silence felt like peace. A week passed before I found the envelope. It slipped under the farmhouse door, simple and unmarked, the kind of thing you might mistake for a bill or a flyer. But the handwriting, shaky, uneven, made my heart stop. Ethan's. I sat at the old kitchen table, the same one where we once shared birthday cakes and late-night talks, and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single page. No excuses. No demands. Just 5 words written with raw honesty. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The words blurred as tears welled up. Part of me wanted to crumble, to pick up the phone and call him right then. But another part, the wiser, scarred part, told me not yet. Not until I could forgive without reopening old wounds. That night, I walked out into the fields. The moonlight spread across the crops like silver threads, soft and endless. Every breath felt heavier, yet freer. I realized forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a slow unraveling, a quiet decision to stop letting pain write your story. I whispered into the open air. I forgive you, Ethan. But not for you, for me. Mini-hook. Just then, a small gust of wind brushed past, like a reply I wasn't expecting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something. But for the first time, I didn't need proof. I just needed peace. Days turned into weeks. I found myself writing again, tending the garden, even laughing with the neighbors who brought fresh pies and stories. Life didn't go back to what it was. It became something softer, slower, more intentional. And sometimes, I catch myself glancing at that letter on the mantel, not as a reminder of what broke, but of what healed. People think revenge ends with destruction. But real justice, the kind that changes you, ends with understanding. Because forgiveness doesn't erase what they did. It just takes back the power it once had over you. I folded the letter, placed it inside my diary, and smiled. Somewhere out there, my son was learning what love really costs. And here, in the quiet hum of this old farmhouse, I was finally learning what peace feels like when it's earned. The morning was quiet, the kind of silence that almost hums, too still, too calm, like the world was holding its breath. I stood by the window, looking out at the mist crawling over the fields, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt complete. But just as that peace began to settle in, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Mom, I'm coming home. I want to see you." My heart skipped. All those memories, the betrayal, the shouting, the humiliation, they came flooding back like a storm I thought had passed. I could almost hear his voice again. The way it cracked the day he said I was just too much. The words had buried themselves deep once. Now they stirred, but they didn't cut anymore. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut forever. Another part whispered, "What if this time, he means it?" The human heart is strange like that. It wants to heal the very hands that broke it. I spent the entire day cleaning the farmhouse, not for him, but for myself. Every sweep of the broom felt like letting go of another ghost. When the door finally creaked open that evening, I saw a man, not the boy who had betrayed me, but someone older, smaller somehow, carrying the weight of his choices. He stepped forward, eyes wet. "Mom, I know I don't deserve this." I stopped him. Maybe not. But forgiveness was never about deserving. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. A bridge rebuilt without words. But here's the twist. Even as we hugged, I realized the real redemption wasn't his. It was mine. The revenge I'd dreamed of, the one that burned hot and cruel, had turned into something softer, more powerful. I'd won not by destroying, but by rising. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace. As night fell, we sat together under the dim kitchen light, sharing tea and memories. And in that quiet space, something shifted. The pain didn't vanish, but it finally found its place. Life has a way of circling back, of testing the edges of your heart, until it learns how to bend without breaking. And maybe that's the real lesson. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's choosing not to let pain define your ending. The rain began that night, soft at first, like whispers against the roof. Then stronger, steadier, like the sky was finally releasing everything it had been holding back. I stood at the porch, watching it fall across the farm. The same land I'd once bought to escape. Now the same place where I found myself again. Ethan was asleep inside, exhaustion written all over his face. And for a fleeting moment, I saw the little boy he once was, running barefoot across our old yard, his laughter echoing in the wind. It hit me like a wave. How love can survive even after everything. Even after betrayal, distance, silence. It hides quietly, waiting for its moment to breathe again. But not every storm washes pain away. Some only teach you how to dance in it. As lightning flashed across the horizon, I remembered the night I'd almost sold this place. The night I'd almost given up. I thought back to that version of myself, fragile, angry, broken. And I realized something powerful. She didn't die. She evolved. Every heartbreak, every betrayal had been sculpting her into who I was now. Steady, rooted, unshakable. I smiled. Because for the first time, my peace wasn't about solitude, it was about strength. The next morning, Ethan came to the porch, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "I still can't believe you stayed here," he said softly. I looked out over the fields, the morning light stretching across them like gold. "Sometimes staying isn't a weakness," I said. "It's courage in disguise." There was a pause. Then he nodded, his voice trembling. "I want to make things right, Mom." I turned to him, not with anger, not with pity, but with the calm of someone who's already forgiven. Then start by being better. Not for me, but for you. And in that single moment, the past loosened its grip. As he left later that day, I stood at the gate and watched him disappear down the long road. The same road he once drove away on, leaving me shattered. This time my heart didn't break. It expanded. Because I'd learned the truth, forgiveness isn't surrender. It's reclaiming your story. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in fire and gold. The farm was quiet again, but it wasn't lonely. It was alive, with memory, with peace, with the echo of everything I'd survived. And somewhere deep inside I whispered to myself, "You did it. You found peace, not because they changed, but because you did."